Three, two, one. Hey folks, welcome back. I'm Eddie G, DM Fumble, and this is another episode of Fumbling Around, where I look at all things related to Dungeons and Dragons and Dragonlance and whatever interests me at the moment. Right now, I want to continue my review of Shadows of the Dragon Queen. I had wanted to get back to this sooner, but other things got in the way, projects and the holidays and so forth. So I promise that the rest of the review of this module will be a little bit more frequent than it has been. So again, I want to pick up on my spoiler-free review of chapters 2 and 3. So let's recap. We looked at the prologue where we got a bunch of information about Dragonlance, bare bones, but very specifically on point for what we need for this module. So there's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down to when looking at the Dragonlance lore, but for running Shadows of the Dragon Queen, we have just the information and details that we need. Next, we have Chapter 2, and this is really the player chapter. This is where we get the player options, including Kender, as well as some of the ways to play Knights of Solamnia or the Mages of High Sorcery. Okay, so going on from now, from Chapter 2, we're in what I call DM country. No players allowed. We start off with an overview of the entire campaign, and this is a great project plan to help keep us on track with what's going on at the moment and where we're going to be headed as we go down the chapters of the module. Plan to come back to this section quite often. I'm planning on putting a little sticky on the page so I can come back to it, make sure I know what I'm doing and where I plan to go for this module. And I keep mentioning this because when I ran Curse of Strahd, I totally messed that one up. And again, in part because I didn't have a strong enough roadmap of where the players needed to stay focused. They wandered around. I gave them a bunch of details. They did this, that, the other thing. Yeah, they met the ghost at Argid Vostholt. They went to the Amber Temple and blah, blah, blah. And by the end, they were kind of forgot really what they needed to do. And the campaign actually just kind of devolved from there. So I know now with Shadow, I can use these pages, this flowchart, roadmap, to help keep me on track, to help keep the game moving in the direction that I want it to go. So after that section, we move on to some background information about some of the enemies that we're going to meet, as well as Ispin. He's a key friend of the heroes. And I don't feel like this is a spoiler since this is part of the character creation, but the players are encouraged to create a connection to how they already know Ispin. And we even have a little table of ideas to help players who might need a little help coming up with some creativity, or they can come up with whatever they want. The reason this is important is that the whole inciting incident for this adventure to start off with is going to the small town for Ispin's funeral. And again, I don't feel like that's a spoiler because that really is page 2 of what the players are going to know about when they start making up their characters for this game. Next, I want to throw out a big thank you for the pronunciation guide that's included in this adventure. I still get so many names wrong in D&D and even in Dragonlance because I didn't have things like this back in the day. I think this should be something that is in every adventure, every book, whatever they're doing, especially since Wizards and TSR has a great habit for coming up with these kind of interestingly convoluted names out there. Put the pronunciation guide. I know some of the characters already, but I'm glad to have a pronunciation for the ones I don't know. After that, we move into, still in Chapter 2, into what they call the Preludes. Now, I can't even call these mini adventures or even side quests. They're really more just like quick scenes. And for what they're designed for, and that is to give new players some basic background information about Dragonlance and Krynn without taking too much time away from getting into the heart of the story, they do a great job. On the other hand, for more creative DMs who maybe want to have a little bit longer campaign, there's a lot of space you can use with this prelude concept, prelude area, that you can add in more details. I know I have some ideas myself that I would want to do for different version of the preludes as we would get started. And that really ends up our chapter 2. So from this point, we've got characters who started out as level 1, and thanks to the preludes, they're now level 2, going into the heart of our story. And that starts with chapter 3. PCs arrive in this small village called Volgar, and it's for the funeral of Isbin, as I mentioned before. Much of this chapter gives you an overview of the village, including some of the key people heroes can interact with, and a few events that they might run into. And this gives us some great role-playing opportunities and can easily be expanded upon for something else. Again, these could be actually mini adventures or mini side quests, as you might want to develop them out. One thing I will say, keep a list of generic names handy. Not all the characters have names, and if your players like to talk a lot to NPCs, do a lot of shopping, things like that, having that handy list of names will serve you very well. So then we go into the funeral, and we have a nice little fun role-playing event there, and then we roll right into something called the Kingfisher Festival, honoring some past event, which there's detailed in the book, but again, I'm not going to spoil it here. The Kingfisher Festival has a fun little game for the heroes to participate, but only the one. Now, if you have access to the Call of Netherdeep adventure, that opening chapter has a whole bunch of other games and events that the players could get involved in. Those can easily be lifted from that book into Shadow of the Dragon Queen for a much lengthier, more role play or more fun festival. Just be aware that in Call of Netherdeep, there's a lot of one-use magic item rewards that the players get as a result of winning competitions. And these might seem a little out of place in a backwater village such as this one. Then we have the big crowning event for the festival. And that goes sideways, pretty badly. During a battle, we're introduced to one of the new innovations presented in this module. So we have the idea of a big battle going on, and we have the idea of the small battlefield where the heroes are involved in. So everything around the heroes, outside of their area, their purview, all that area was just called the fray. It's an abstract idea, abstract concept. It's the other part of the battle going on. We're not going to focus on it. We're not going to detail it too much. The heroes are going to stay in their area, and that's what they're going to do. Now, if the players wander too close to the edge of the fray or go inside of it, like they think they're going to be able to maneuver around, well, then there's actually some bad consequences that can happen. They're going to take damage from some random action going on in that scrum around them. Again, I really like this concept, and I would like to see what more is going to happen as other people try to develop it and maybe modify it in ways. I think there's, again, a lot of interesting space you can do design-wise for making the fray a real interesting concept. And again, I think it goes back to the fact that Wizards, TSR, have tried to do mass combat systems in the past. They had Battle System, and then they had, I forget what it was called in 3rd edition, but they had one for that. And they never really took off. They never seemed to work well. I know the Battle System one seemed to be a little too complicated for what you could do. Here they're finally saying, you know what, D&D, stay with the characters in that space, character-focused. The big battle's going around. DMs can describe it however you want. Keep it abstract. Keep it fun, but keep it off camera. Anyway, so we have that. After the battle, we have some more exploration and role-playing events, including some other members of the Red Dragon Army that we're now being introduced to. And afterwards, the town leaders, they want to call the players in to decide their next action. And they want to put the heroes into that discussion. But I have to ask the question, why? What have the heroes done to deserve this? They showed up to the town maybe a day or two ago, and now they have this elite status? Well, here's where I think you can go back to those preludes from earlier. And you can develop them a little bit more and have them have more impact on the town of Volgar. Either the preludes or mini adventures, whatever you want to do with them, impact characters Maybe they involve Becklin, who's a key character in this adventure. Maybe they involve Ispin himself, who passes on details. Maybe they somehow do something that helps the town. Supplies that they're bringing along with Ispin or with Becklin or whatever. And while the heroes may never actually make it to that final destination, their name and their recognition becomes part of the lore of that town. So when they come into town, they are revered for their past actions or for the stories that the other people have told about them. So that's certainly something I think you can actually do with that prelude space to add a little bit more value here, a little bit more of a logical connection to this part. So they're planning the next action. Unfortunately, at this point, the players end up getting railroaded into we have to evacuate the town. Okay. That being said, the town evacuation is really kind of cool. There's some great stuff that allows players to do kind of skill checky kind of things to help, do the preparations and things like that. And then there's some more combat that we get as they're, the last line of defense while everyone else gets out of town. And then the heroes get to be part of that last boat out of Dodge. For all the railroading that we have during this chapter, we do have something interesting in that the chapter actually ends with the DM having the ability to decide certain key points that have gone on. Did one of the favorite characters die during the battle? Maybe, maybe not. Is there a traitor amongst the refugees? Well, we don't know. Now, I really love this aspect because it allows the DM to help shape parts of this campaign and this module based on what their personal preferences and what the preferences of the players are. So I really like that part of it, even though if I felt the first part of it was a little too much railroaded. Now, going back to that battle, something else I want to mention, which is that battle, the battle for Volgar, is the first time we get to leverage Warriors of Krynn. Now, if you don't know about this, Warriors of Krynn is a companion board game that goes along with this module. Now, you can play this entire adventure from the book without ever having to go to the board game. But if you want to, you can go to the board game and play out some of the bigger battles. This is one of them. This is the first one we get. So that you have a little bit more chance to influence. And one of the interesting things is, in some way, your characters from the game can actually be ported over in one way or another. I don't know the details yet. Can be ported over into the Warriors of Krynn board game and have the ability to have some level of influence on what's going on all around them. So this could be a nice way to take a break, run the battle. Let's see how the battle actually plays out and how does it influence what goes on or what comes back when we go back to the role-playing table aspect of the game. So again, you can do that, you can not do it, either way. I will do a review of Warriors of Krynn once I've had a chance to read up on it and study a little bit more. But otherwise, this has been my review of chapters 2 and 3 of Shadows of the Dragon Queen. If you have any comments or questions, please leave a comment in the section below. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to help the channel grow, consider sharing this link with a friend, fellow D&D or Dragonlance fan. And if you want to follow me on social, I'm DM Fumble, drop the E, on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for your time. 3, 2, 1.